there any public comment on the agenda items other than development or rezoning applications? Okay, we'll move on to item 4. Item 4 is a citation honoring Darcy Mosley. Mrs. Clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. For those that are not aware, a very special woman passed away a few weeks ago. And a woman by the name of Darcy Mosley has been a part of Mill Creek Township for many years and served in Mill Creek Township at the school district for many years. What was the total years, by the way, Mr. Mosley? 18? She and I actually started about the same time, and I remember when she went to Walnut Creek and became the principal there. For me, Darcy Mosley was a friend, and she was someone that I looked up to. She was a mentor. I followed her and watched her as she sought to help more and more people in every role that she took on. She was a principal at Walnut Creek, and then she became the assistant superintendent for Mill Creek Township School District. Her passion for students, her passion for curriculum, and for the teachers that she worked with was unparalleled. I can honestly say that part of the reason that I ever maybe had the courage to run for an office is because I was able to watch Darcy Mosley in the roles that she had, how she grew, how she challenged herself, how she had a voice that people listened to. She educated on herself on so many things in so many places, and she was able to use her knowledge to help others. We should all be so lucky to know someone like Darcy in our lives, and I am honored to have known her. We have here a citation that we are going to be presenting to the Mosley family who is here today. Tim Mosley, her husband, Ben Mosley, a former student of mine, and Tessa Mosley, of course, and her mother is here as well. So thank you very much. I am going to now read the citation into the record so that it will forever now be in the minutes of Mill Creek Township, and believe me, we have minutes from 1803. So this is for Evs, as the kids say. Right, Ben? Okay. Whereas Darcy Mosley was born on May 11th, 1969 in Pierpoint, Ohio, and is the beloved daughter of Karen Rang and the late Alan Sanford. And whereas Darcy graduated from Jefferson High School in Jefferson, Ohio, and she attended Edinburgh and Gannon universities where she earned her BA, MA, and superintendent certification. Her teaching days began in Maryland before moving to Erie to work in the Erie School District. It quickly became obvious that she was a special kind of educator, well beyond her years of experience. And whereas Darcy began her career in administration as an assistant principal at East High School, she was the co-founder of a joint program pairing the Erie School District with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to offer students an opportunity to take an accredited course, sparking student growth through relevant connections. And whereas Darcy moved to the Mill Creek Township School District in 2004, where she spent 9 years in administration at Walnut Creek Middle School. During those years, she influenced many young people. Her ripple effect will live on forever as she supported many student events, including reading programs, Pie the Principal, Tape the Principal, and TRFCC Character Education Initiative, programs that were the students' favorites. And whereas in 2013, Darcy began her position as superintendent in the Mill Creek Township School District. A multifaceted administrator and versatile teacher, she could be found anywhere in the district. From the boardroom, the classroom, the athletic fields, the cafeteria, to the maintenance offices. And whereas Darcy's purest joy came from time spent with her loving family, including her husband Tim, daughter Tessa, and son Ben, she and Tim were truly partners who walked side by side through life, watching her daughter follow her footsteps into education and her son pursue his dreams of becoming an aerospace engineer filled her with immense pride. She also found tranquility in long walks and with her canine pals, yoga and reading. And whereas, in addition to her parents, Darcy is survived by her loving husband, Tim, daughter Tessa, and son Benjamin, brother Raymond Sanford of Jefferson, stepfather Ronald Rang, mother-in-law Sandra Mosley Osterman of Geneva, sister-in-law Erica Sullen, Justice, uncles, nieces, nephews, many friends whom she was both an inspiration and a guiding light. Now, therefore, we, the undersigned Mill Creek Township Supervisors, celebrate the life and contributions of Darcy Mosley. Her lifetime as a mentor, a leader, a second mom, a welcome voice of support, a fierce advocate, an ambassador for all, and a true friend to many will reverberate through all of our hearts. May Darcy rest in peace. In witness whereof, we have set our hands and the seal of Mill Creek Township this 28th day of June, 2022. We truly thank Darcy for her service to this community. Mill Creek is a better place because she was in it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Clear. It was a great tribute. Mr. Mosley, you're welcome to stay for the meeting, or feel free to leave. That's up to you. But thank you all for attending. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank Mr. Winchell and Ms. Winchell as well for being here, from representing the school board. Thank you very much for being here.
Item 5 on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the June 14th meeting. Any comments or questions from the board on the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is approval of the bills. Any comments or questions on those?
Make a motion to approve the bills?
I'll second paying the bills.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 7, moving on, is the bids and quotations. The first item would be the vehicle auction bid announcement and awards. Mr. Donikowski.
Thank you. Good evening. A public bid opening was held on June 23rd for the auction of 13 township vehicles that no longer have a useful purpose to the township. We received bids for 12 of the 13 vehicles with prices listed on the attached spreadsheet. It is my recommendation to sell these vehicles to the highest bidder per the attached spreadsheet.
Thank you, Mr. Donikowski. Mr. Shaw, do these have to be read individually, the award winner?
I think it's fine just to reference the attached spreadsheet.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the board for Mr. Donikowski on the bids? Is there a motion to approve the awarding?
Yes, I make a motion to sell the cars.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on the agenda is approval for the purchase of Stop the Bleed kits. There's a request to purchase 35 Stop the Bleed kits to be deployed at strategic locations throughout various Mill Creek Township-owned buildings and fleet vehicles. These would be purchased through the Mill Creek Paramedic Service at a cost of approximately $40 each, for a total of $1,400. Any comments or questions from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I guess I would like to personally thank you for looking into the Stop the Bleed kits. Just so that everyone knows, Chairman Olet also arranged for many of the personnel here, actually throughout the entire township, to be trained in CPR. And I think that that is something invaluable to all of us here at the township and all of our employees, you know, while on the job, but also outside of the job. And these Stop the Bleed kits as well will, you know, save lives. It could be someone that is on site somewhere, it could be here in the building. So thanks for looking in and doing this.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of these kits.
And I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is change order number 2 for the Wilkins Run Stream Restoration Project. Mr. Puz?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The CEC is the engineering firm that designed the Wilkins Run Stream Restoration Project that the township will use to satisfy its pollution reduction plan quota for the current MS4 permit cycle. This change order would engage CEC to assist in the submission of the required floodplain permit and to provide bidding assistance to the township. CEC has proposed a fee of $2,000 for floodplain permit assistance and $6,000 for bidding assistance, for a total additional fee of $8,000. Township engineer Ann Sokol recommends approval of this change order. The funds will come from the Wilkins Run PRP design line item in Planning and Development's capital budget.
Thank you, Matt. Any questions for Mr. Puz on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 8 on the agenda is a public hearing on subdivision and land development plans. The first item would be the Schloss and Rainer small subdivision plan. Mr. Puz.
Yes, good evening. At the regular meeting on June 7th, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended 5-0 for approval of the subdivision as submitted. There were no comments from any citizens regarding the subdivision.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Is there someone here to speak on behalf of this small subdivision plan? Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Jim Walka, 3200 West 32nd Street. I represent Doctors Schloss and Rainer in this small subdivision. They'd like to divide their property and sell the lot that they create to the north. Their existing dentist office lies entirely on the south parcel.
Okay. Does the board have any comments or questions on this?
No questions.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on behalf of this small subdivision plan? Okay, we'll close the hearing on this first item. Is there a motion from the board to approve?
Motion to approve.
And I will second Dan.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is Lot 317, the Fillmore Self-Storage LLC Land Development Plan. Mr. Puz.
Yes, at their regular meeting on June 7th, 2022, Planning Commission recommended 5-0 to approve the plan as submitted. There was one citizen that came to speak on behalf of this. He had questions regarding utilities to the building as well as the stormwater management pond. Yeah. Basically, for the pond, he wanted to make sure that children were not drowned in it, basically. But from my understanding, it is a dry basin, so.
Okay. And it was a 5-0 affirmative vote?
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. Is there someone here to speak on behalf of the Fillmore Self-Storage? We'll open the hearing on this item.
Jim Welka for Fillmore Self-Storage. This development really sits on 3 separate tax parcels. It's going to be 3 separate storage buildings with common access and parking, cross-parking and access agreements. There are no sewer and water hookups. There will not be an office, simply cold storage.
Thank you, Mr. Welka. Any comments or questions from the board?
No questions, comments?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on Lot 317? Okay, we'll close the hearing.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Because the next 3 are 317, Lot 318, 319, would we be able to vote? Mr. Shaw, would we be able to combine those, make a motion to combine them and vote once?
Yeah, assuming the vote's the same on all 3, you can do them as a group.
Mr. Welk, everything's the same on all of the lots, just as far as the request for the...
Correct.
I'm good with doing them all at
Okay.
once.
I'll make a, can I make a
Just real
motion?
quick,
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Paz, was the vote of the Planning Commission the same on all 3, 5-0?
Correct. Yes, it was.
With the same comment from that individual regarding stormwater and so forth?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to vote, or do I have to make a motion to combine them first?
No, you just simply make a motion to
Okay.
approve Lot 317, 318, and
Okay, I'll
319.
make a motion then to approve Lot 317, 318, and 319.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on the agenda, okay, we'll close the hearing for the Fillmore self-storage. The next item on the agenda is Nomar Erie LLC Land Development Plan. Mr. Puz.
Yes. At the regular meeting on June 7th, 2022, the Planning Commission recommended 5-0 to approve the land development as submitted. One resident did appear to speak on behalf of that land development. She had concerns about the buffer requirements in the rear as well as when the property officially changed zoning.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. We'll open the hearing. Is there someone here to speak on behalf of Nomar Erie?
Good evening, Mike Sanford, 4721 Atlantic Avenue. I'm the surveyor that prepared the plan. It's for a small office building, small parking lot on the north side of 8th Street. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I have no questions.
No questions, Mike.
No, I don't either.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. Is there anyone in attendance wishing to speak on this land development plan for Nomar Erie? Okay, we'll close the hearing. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
I will second that.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Claire?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
may I address all of our millions of watchers out there?
You may.
I just want to let everyone know that we have been given this information, and we've had executive session where we discuss all of this in detail. So we're not just making arbitrary decisions just for the first time ever seeing this. So we already know what everyone's going to say. So I just want to make sure that sometimes when you're not in government, you don't know those things. So I didn't know it before I was in government. So, okay. Just wanted to say that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Resolution 2022 R31, resolution pursuant to Resolution 2015 R20 in the Municipal Records Manual to approve proposed disposition of certain township records this month It is MPD dash cam video between June 29th and July 12th of this year due to reaching the end of the required retention period. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Claire?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item on the agenda is number 10, Voices for Independence Settlement and Presentation. Attorney Shaw?
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to head over to the screen and talk loud enough for everyone to hear me.
We could move the thing over too.
So I'm here today to talk about a settlement that has been reached in the Voices for Independence lawsuit that was filed a number of years ago. Over the past several years, we've been chipping away at various issues and are now at a point where we're at the final settlement point. So in 2011, Mill Creek and PennDOT were sued by Voices for Independence under Title II of the Americans with Disability Act, as well as Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. The Voices lawsuit raised numerous issues ranging from curb ramps and transition between curb ramps in the streets, sidewalks, roadway berms, storm drain openings, public transit stops, access routes at the township building, as well as access to public right-of-way routes to other municipal facilities. Under the ADA, there's a prohibition of discrimination. No qualified individual with a disability shall, because public entity facilities are inaccessible to or unusable by individuals with disabilities, can be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of the services, programs, or activities of a public entity, or be subject to discrimination by any public entity. And facilities is very broadly defined to include buildings, structures, sites, roads, walks, and so forth. Essentially under the ADA, since January of 1992, if a municipality newly constructed a facility, it was supposed to comply with the ADA. On that same date, if the township made an alteration to a facility, that also had to be compliant with, that alteration had to be compliant with the ADA. Under existing facilities, again, the township is required to operate that facility such that any service, program, or activity is readily accessible to or usable by individuals with disabilities. Enables municipalities to evaluate the facilities and do different things with it, with those to bring them into compliance. Courts have universally determined that sidewalks are covered under the ADA, which is what triggers this final portion of the settlement. A little bit about what we've done to date. The first consent decree was entered into by Mill Creek in 2011, in which it did a look back to see what work had been done since 1992, either in the new facility or in alterations. Township completed that study in 2011. It entered into a second consent decree in 2013, where Mill Creek agreed to install ADA compliant ramps in various locations. It will be completing that obligation this year. We have a handful of ramps that, in a final survey we did, that had been missed over the prior years. First partial settlement was between in 2014, where Mill Creek and PennDOT agreed on an allocation of responsibilities between themselves when the work is done, where a state road and a local road intersect. And that's worked out well so far since that time. In the second partial settlement, PennDOT agreed to certain design standards, which were the same as Mill Creek was using within the township. And then the township entered into a third consent decree in 2014, where we agreed to install compliant pedestrian street crossings when roads are paved that have curb ramps. So if there's a curb ramp on each side of the street, that crossing between those have to meet certain ADA standards to be compliant. And we've been doing that ever since 2014 as part of our paving program. We entered into a fourth consent decree where we agreed to conduct a survey of the various sidewalks and services, programs, and activities offered by the township to determine ADA compliance. Mill Creek conducted those surveys in 2016 and reported the survey results to Voices in 2017. In 2015, also PennDOT agreed to conduct its own survey of the sidewalks in Mill Creek Township. In 2016, Mill Creek agreed to construct ADA compliant sidewalks along Caughey Road. Those are the new sidewalks that you've seen from Stertania Road all the way down to 26th Street. And then PennDOT also agreed to do some work on existing sidewalks on 12th Street, Peninsula Drive, and West 26th Street to bring those sidewalks into compliance. Mill Creek completed its Caughey Road work in 2019. And then the fifth consent decree in 2017, the township agreed to bring certain existing services, programs, and activities in the township's buildings and parks into ADA compliance. Mill Creek has completed that work this year with the last work that was done in Scott Park. So the township has really accomplished a lot in the last 10 years or so to bring all of its facilities and services into compliance. This building was a lot of areas were redone as part of the work that was being done to improve the facilities as well. The final settlement deals with the last issue that remains, which is non-compliant sidewalks. It's the last one that we need to resolve between the township and PennDOT and Voices. In exchange for the work that's going to be proposed to be done, Voices is releasing Mill Creek and PennDOT of any further claims under the ADA and Rehabilitation Act and is dismissing its lawsuit with prejudice. Obviously, the court will retain jurisdiction to make sure that the parties live up to their obligations under these agreements. In addition, PennDOT's also releasing Mill Creek for any claims of costs incurred by PennDOT in doing any of the work that it has done to date on the various sidewalks located within Mill Creek Township, but that were on state roads. The obligations under this will terminate upon the consent decree will terminate upon the completion of the obligations under the agreement, which is expected to be over a period of about 20 years, to get all the various sidewalk work done that's necessary in the township. So the township's obligations under this agreement would be, there are certain areas that have been identified by the survey as priority areas, in areas that where the township is proposing to do this work. Under that, the township is going to replace 100 non-compliant sidewalk segments. Typically, a segment is an area of sidewalk between two roads. So there's 100 of those. The township has already begun doing some of that work. 2 of them were done last year, and I think there's 4 to 5 that are on the list to be completed for this year. Township is also obligated to repair sidewalk heavings in certain areas that are more than 3/4 of an inch. The standard under the ADA is a 1/4 of an inch. You have to do some action if it's above a quarter. If it's above half an inch, then you need to replace it. We were able to get them to agree to 3/4 of an inch. And we're going to evaluate correct sidewalk cross slopes that are more than 5%. Those are the ones that really have the most significant impact on the folks that are in wheelchairs. Evaluate and repair badly damaged sidewalks as part of our survey. We discovered there were certain portions of sidewalks that really need to be replaced or fixed because they just really weren't, you couldn't really travel across them. And also, there were various non-vegetative sidewalk obstructions that need to be repaired, fire hydrants that narrowed the width of the sidewalk too much, or light posts in places that did the same, or manhole covers that weren't compliant with the ADA. And then lastly, any vegetation along the sidewalks that encroach on the sidewalks that need to be removed, that would be part of the process as well. Township would also have to establish an online complaint process. We would investigate the complaints and perform corrective action if necessary, but it would still be within the township's discretion to prioritize what complaints get addressed first. We were to budget $15,000 annually to address those complaints. If the money's not spent by the end of the year, then it doesn't continue to build up. It goes away. But each year we have to replenish it with $15,000. historically, we just haven't, we've heard some complaints on occasion, and have addressed those as we've addressed them, but we're pretty comfortable with the 15,000 should cover any issues that arise. Also, once we establish this online process, we have to issue a press release publicizing it so people know that it's available. These are the areas of Mill Creek that are at issue. The areas that are highlighted. You see this area here, that's highlighted here in the yellow. And then there's a couple here that are dark purple. Those are the areas that we've identified as areas that will be the focus of this work. They were identified in part for two reasons. One, they're either areas that are adjacent to commercial areas, so that improving the connectivity of those areas to those commercial areas, as well as areas that were nearby schools, so improving those areas for that are nearby schools. In terms of the segment replacement, that really focuses in on this area, and then this area. Those are the ones that we found to be had the most sidewalks that had significant issues. Sidewalks were evaluated not only based on the area, but also what their condition was. Did they have a lot of heavings? Were there cross slopes off? Were there gaps? Were there, was the sidewalk too narrow? All of those things were taken into account. The actual survey, as I said, was done in 2017. It's actually done by a Segway that was outfitted to, automatically collect all this data. So we had a lot of data that was really helpful in evaluating how to prioritize these sidewalks. In terms of vegetation, we've identified various areas under which the township inspector will go out, review an area, determine where there are vegetation issues, and then send notices out to the residents saying, okay, you've got a tree limb that's too low and blocking the sidewalk, or you have a shrub or a bush that's blocking the sidewalk, those types of things. That's to make sure that those continue to be maintained. In terms of how it's going to be funded, historically we've been able to fund pretty much all of the program work through our township CDBG funding. The thought was to rely on that funding as well to do at least some of the work here, particularly the segment work. The township would annually commit about 50% of its annual CDBG block grants for these sidewalk repairs. That's typically the CDBG funding is about $260,000 a year, so half of that, $130,000, would be what we would be required to fund. We could always spend more if we need to. And we do have provisions in the agreement that, if we don't quite spend enough because of the way the projects work out, that money would carry over to the next year's as part of our obligations, so that we would always have a little bit of flexibility with respect to the projects and not have to overspend in any particular year. We would also commit $50,000 a year in other funding, but that could also come from the CDBG. So if we have a year where we don't have other CDBG projects, but we have the funding available, we can use that funding for that $50,000. We'd have the discretion to determine what work gets funded each year. So if we decide on a certain year to do heavings instead of segments, we could do that and still be in compliance with this. We also have the discretion to rely upon the enforcement of our sidewalk ordinance to fulfill funding obligations. Under our ordinance, the residents are responsible for maintaining those sidewalks. So, for example, heavings could be an area to look into to determine whether, if someone has an individual sidewalk that's particularly bad, maybe it should be their responsibility to fix it, as opposed to a whole block of a sidewalk that may have issues. We have to submit annual reports showing what work has been completed and how the funding was used. And then, as we have with all the prior consent agreements with them, the ADA requires the defendants to pay their counsel fees. Part of this agreement would be paying the counsel fees that have been incurred since the last consent decree, which for purposes of Mill Creek is $2,430. And then each year we get an invoice for any additional work that they may have had to do based on, if if we haven't complied, or things along those lines. So I frankly expect it to be fairly incidental, each year, as it has been for most of what we've done here. The theory on our part was to, it's clear we had an obligation. It's clear that it had slipped through the cracks. And so we've done our best to try to bring everything into compliance as quickly as we could and as cost-effective as we could over the term of this. And I think we've been pretty effective in doing that. And I think the plaintiffs, at least in the discussions I've had with their counsel, have appreciated the township's willingness and ability to make things run as smoothly as possible. So my recommendation would be is for the board to approve this settlement and authorize the solicitor to execute the appropriate settlement documents that you have in front of you. Any questions? Any questions?
This is going to take 20 years.
Given the number of segments we have, and they're trying to not, obviously we wouldn't do it all once. It cost a fortune, which was one of our defenses in trying to argue why we didn't have to fix every sidewalk in the township, just because it would be so costly, it would be millions and millions of dollars. But this is, I think, a pretty reasonable result for what we're doing at long term. And you can see from the map, there's a lot of areas that could use that kind of investment.
Attorney Shaw? Sorry. Attorney Shaw?
Yeah.
I have a quick question for you. When we use the CBDG funding, do we have to use it in an LEI area?
At this point, we've had a dispute with the CDBG folks over the scope of the sidewalks that would fall within coverage, but we have enough sidewalks that fall within the LMI areas that we're good, probably good for about 10 years worth.
Okay, all right, good.
The map, the shaded green areas at this point are the CDBG LMI areas.
Oh, okay,
So,
great.
we have this whole area here and this whole area here to do before we run into having
Before-
to go back
okay.
to CDBG and pick up the arguments that we had last year with them over funding.
Got it, okay. Thank you for clarification.
And if it turns out that CDBG doesn't cover the project or ultimately goes away, the backup in the agreement is that township would simply just pay the 1/3.
Got it,
So.
okay. Thank you very much.
Anything else?
A lot of the township was old before there were sidewalks. And after these are fixed or repaired, will the property owners then have to pay to maintain them in the future?
Currently, the township, sidewalks, if you live in the township and the sidewalk in front of your house, you're obligated to maintain the sidewalk. We've been able, at least through the CDBG funding, to help the cost of that so that they don't incur those costs. But that only goes so far.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Okay, are there any further comments or questions from the board? Okay, is there a motion to approve the settlement and authorize the solicitor to approve the documents as presented?
Yes, so moved.
And I will second, Dan.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 11 on the agenda is the Route 5 Westlake Road and Garlock Drive traffic light removal. Mr. Donakowski.
Thank you. The Mill Creek Township Traffic Department has completed the necessary traffic studies for the removal of the traffic signal at Route 5 and Garlock Drive. These studies have shown that the signal is no longer warranted, and there have been no reportable accidents in the last 90 days. It is my recommendation to approve the removal of this traffic signal as it is no longer warranted by PennDOT specifications.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve the removal?
Motion to approve?
And you have a second.
Okay. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Item 12 is the DEP Household Small Business Hazardous Waste Program Reimbursement Grant. Mr. Bach.
Okay, yes, we're looking to retroactively approve the PADAP HHW grant for the 2022 special collection event. That was held on Saturday, May 21st, 2022, from 9 to noon, with 30 volunteers and 350 residents in attendance. The recycling department recycled 311 tires, 9,777 pounds of paper, which was shredded, and the certificate of destruction was received by North Coast Shredding. With the amount of paper recycled, the event saved 83 trees, 34,300 gallons of water, 53.9 barrels of oil, and 14.7 cubic yards of landfill space. So the recycling department submitted the record of operations and the application for reimbursement under the Household Small Business Hazardous Waste Collection Program. And under the grant, they are requesting $1,773.26 from the Pennsylvania DEP. The grant deadline is June 30th, so they wanted to get this application in prior to that in order to get the grant. I believe, Kim, did you attend this event?
I did, yes, Mr. Bach. I did attend the event. I was there from around 8:30 to noon, and all of the residents, the 350 residents that came, they were so excited. I didn't even know this was a thing, but I at home collect my bills and I shred them, but we can take them here, and then the township gets money for them. So I am now going to start to collect all of my paper that I want to shred, and I'm saving it for this yearly event that takes place. So, because we get money for it. So, yeah, it was really great. And, residents were very happy.
Okay,
thank
very
you.
good.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the grant reimbursement application?
Motion to approve? Oh,
Got
sorry.
it? Go ahead, Kim. I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Claire?
Yes.
And I vote yes. There is nothing under Treasurer Communications, hiring request, Public Works, Fleet Maintenance. Rob, do you want to do this one, or you want me to?
Bear with me 1 second here. Yes, the Fleet Maintenance Department would like to hire William Townsend with a start date of June 30th, or June 29th, I'm sorry, at a rate of $20.38 per hour. William worked for Shivers Construction for the last 8 years as a shop manager and mechanic. He has a Class A CDL and a Class 7 inspection license.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Any comments or questions from the board? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the hiring of Mr. Townsend.
Yep. I'll second this hiring.
Thank you. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Claire?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is a hiring request for the Mill Creek Police Department. Mrs. Claire?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The police department is requesting approval to hire the following probationary police officers. Christopher Larson, that will begin tomorrow, the 29th of June. Justin Misnick, also beginning the 29th of June, 2022. Brandon Miller, who will be beginning his work on July 13th, 2022. Eli Peronial, who will begin tomorrow, June 29th. And finally, Jordan Query. And he will begin on July 13th, 2022. Starting rate will be $28.78 per hour, as per contracted. And these are for officers that have left and will also be leaving here in the near future. So we are replacing those retirees.
Thank you, Mrs. Claire. Any comments from the board? Any questions? Is there a motion to approve these hirings?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is an employee termination. Mr. Bach?
We have a request for approval from our Human Resource Department to approve a termination of a seasonal part-time lifeguard effective Monday, June 20th, 2022. I'll make a motion, unfortunately, to approve this termination of this part-time employee.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next item is the PSATS Regional Forum. This year, the Regional Forum will be held on Thursday, August 4th, from 9 until 4 p.m. at the Bayfront Sheraton. The cost is $99 a person. The request is to send 8 employees to this educational session. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the PSATS conference?
Second.
Hey, Mr. Bach, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mrs. Clear?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Executive sessions were held on June 16th and the 22nd to discuss various issues. Next item would be the annual 4th of July parade. Mr. Bach?
Yes, the 55th annual 4th of July parade will be held on Monday, July 4th, starting at West 12th and Marshall and heading west to the American Legion. It will start at 9:45 and it's projected to last about 2.5 hours. Just of note, West 12th Street will be closed at Peninsula Drive starting at 8 a.m. and it will be closed all the way to Grant Avenue. So you're looking at right around a 4-hour closure of West 12th Street from 8 until the parade is concluded around noon. As you know, it's been canceled the last 2 years. We get a lot of calls on it, although it's not our parade. It is the Mill Creek Parade Committee, a separate entity, but we get a lot of calls here at the township wondering, you know, is it still on? And, you know, we're looking forward to it again. So it is on, and I believe, I think Dan and I are going to be attending on behalf of the township. Unfortunately, Kim has another obligation, but
I'm sorry. I would totally be on a float.
we'll be thinking of you as we throw the
Next year, I'll be on a
candy.
float.
Right.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Bach.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to solicitor communications.
Nothing on my end.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 14, citizens to be heard. Is there anyone here wishing to address the board? Okay, please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Pam Kornman, probably recognize the name, 3706 West 14th Street. I am here with a petition signed by 15 people representing 11 homes in the area of 14th Street, both sides, north and south, Black Monk Brewery. They are destroying our neighborhood. I've emailed multiple times. I've sent video of what this sounds like inside of my home. This board is choosing to support this bar over these residents that own their homes and want them gone. My husband has cancer, stage 4, chemotherapy, works 55 hours a week. He's sleeping in the basement of a home he paid for. Why? My noise ordinance says that you should be protecting our rights as ensure the public health, safety, and welfare shall not be abridged by making and creating of noise pollution or public nuisances from disturbing, excessive, or offensive noises. They have whatever band, whatever crappy band they choose to have down there, we have to listen to them. On a beautiful Sunday afternoon, 5 hours from noon to 5, I had a family picnic planned with my kids and my grandchildren. My daughter's here, packed my grandson up and took him home because the noise is so bad. Do you care about my grandkids and their hearing? My family, my husband, I'm sleeping, me and my husband rotate the couch in the basement. You wouldn't put up with this in your homes. I've reached out to PLCB and PLCB enforcement, who tells me that this board has issued a permit stating, do not enforce the noise ordinance for this bar. Why? You've emailed my daughter and said you're working very hard to make sure that all parties are being treated equally. How are we being treated equally? I'm in a residential neighborhood. I will leave this. This is for you guys. Residential neighborhood. My neighbor, who couldn't be here,